The Grand Prix of Canada is over. Although it was a thrilling race, Toto Wolff has emerged as the weekend's most significant story. Old rivalries were rekindled in Montreal when the two club managers who dominated last season's headlines squared off once more. That's right, the head of Red Bull, Christian Horner, reportedly squared off with the head of Mercedes, Toto Wolff, over the weekend, and from what we can tell, he brought along a few buddies. Because of how significant this was, stay to the very end to learn more. When it comes to F1 rivalries, we all think of Senna vs. Prost and Hunt vs. Lauda. We think of those incredible drivers who lit up the Formula One world with daring acts of driving, who pushed each other to ever greater feats of bravery. Rivalries between teams aren't so well remembered, and rivalries between team bosses? Well, they barely earn a footnote in the history book of Formula One. There is a pair of team principals in the sport at the moment, though, that are doing their best to change that. In 2021, the Drivers' Championship spilled over from the grid and into the pit lane. Mercedes' Tom Wolff cast himself as the protagonist in this play. His Mercedes team had won everything that Formula One had to offer for 7 years in a row and had done so with a driver who will go down as the greatest of all time, Lewis Hamilton. They were stately and refined, above the bickering and fighting of the teams below them. Christian Horner was portrayed as the villain, rising up from the peasantry to upset and overthrow the silver-clad ruling class. While Red Bull may not have had the car to fight Mercedes for the Constructors' Championship, the normal background of the team principal, they did have the driver to fight for the Drivers' Championship. The media and fans turned Max Verstappen into everything Hamilton wasn't. If Hamilton was Maverick, Verstappen was Iceman. Hamilton was Potter, Verstappen was Malfoy. Hamilton God, Verstappen the Devil. As the championship heated up, the team bosses did everything they could to help their champions, and that inevitably meant they clashed in the media time and time again. Speaking about their 2021 rivalry, Horner said, "To be honest with you, I just tried to stay true to our values, to keep our heads down and do the best job that we could. You could see that it boiled over in the garage next door on a few occasions. That's something I haven't seen against another competitor. I have raced against Ross Brown, Stefano Domenicali, Ron Dennis, Flavio Briatore, and I never ever saw that kind of reaction." Horner was once caught on film saying, "I'd wish he'd shut the f up," in response to a Wolff interview, having earlier said there is no relationship between the pair, accusing other bosses of kissing Wolff's arse. Horner claims the Red Bull versus Ferrari rivalry and his relationship with Scuderia team principal Mattia Binotto is very different. It has been contained to being on track, which is healthy. Added Horner, "It is the way it should be. Last year it bubbled over into a lot of off-track politicking and other things in the background. It is a lot less personal now." Many people, us included, thought that it was how it was going to stay this year. It was no longer about the holier-than-thou Hamilton versus Verstappen. It was Leclerc against Verstappen. Neither could be seen as a young troublemaker, here to mess with the F1 status quo. They were two old friends ready to do battle on the track like great old rivals. But apparently it takes more than one winter to heal the wound of losing the Drivers' Championship, and Toto Wolff isn't ready to accept his new home as third fastest, as the best of the also-rans. His team have been lobbying the FIA since day one of the season, asking for an interview in the car regulations for the season to save their car from bouncing. For months it has seemed to fall on deaf ears, but in Baku, a line was crossed. Hamilton almost crashed multiple times. He was bouncing so badly, and a number of drivers complained of pain caused by the bouncing and purposing, that it was at its brutal worst in Azerbaijan. The FIA released a statement on Thursday before the race in Montreal that they would be intervening to protect the drivers. Toto and his Mercedes team had been campaigning for this for months, and they had finally gotten their wish. Then, in Canada, after the FIA had announced the changes, the team bosses had their normal race week meeting, but there was nothing normal about what happened. One witness said Mercedes boss Wolff lost his shit, while another reported that he went into full Abu Dhabi spec, a reference to the Australians' meltdown when Lewis Hamilton lost out of the title at the closing race in the Gulf last year. Apparently, in the meeting, Horner told Wolff to put his own house in order, after Toto claimed that the other teams weren't doing anything to address the bouncing in their cars. All of this occurred right in front of the Netflix cameras. If you want to know which episode is going to be the most anticipated of the new season, then it is whichever one includes this argument. No quotes or footage has come out of the meeting yet, but according to people who were there, it was unlike anything they had ever seen before. Mattia Binotto apparently took sides with Christian Horner as well. He said Wolff was making the demand simply because Mercedes had not succeeded with their 2022 car, and the Alpine boss Otmar Szafnauer was against Wolff also. What was the cause of what may have been the biggest fight in recent F1 history? It was, of course, Mercedes' relentless lobbying of the FIA for rules changes to help them improve their car. But there is more to it than just the political game that Mercedes was playing. There have been whispered accusations of Mercedes having an insider in the FIA, and a few team bosses think the evidence against the Silver Arrows is pretty damning. Part of the FIA statement stated that teams would be allowed to make changes to the floors that were previously illegal in the car regulations. Recently, Mercedes turned up with a new floor stay that would have previously been illegal, but the FIA statement meant was now legal. How they managed to get it designed, engineered, produced, and shipped to Canada from England so quickly was beyond many of the team bosses. The TD came out when our chief technical officer was flying over, so it was quite late. We weren't able to stay here. Alpine boss Otmar Zafnauer said his team could not have engineered the stay in a day. He added, "But how could Mercedes have known about the statement before it was released?" Well, former Mercedes executive Shalia Rao was appointed FIA Secretary General for Sport on a temporary basis at the start of the month. How did Mercedes respond to the whispers about them knowing about the rule change beforehand? Well, they should have shown the teams or the FIA the working behind how they designed it and explained how they made it and shipped it to Canada. That isn't what they did, though. Instead, they removed the stay in expectation of a protest from other teams that would have led to an investigation. If they had nothing to hide, this wouldn't have been a problem, but if they did have something to hide, then avoiding an investigation was the only option. This is quite quickly turning into a plot that wouldn't be Armis in a movie mystery novel, isn't it? After the writing, Toto Wolff took an opportunity to share his feelings about the other team bosses who had teamed up against him in the meeting earlier in the weekend. This is a sport where you are trying to keep a competitive advantage or gain it, but this situation has clearly gone too far, said Wolff. All drivers, at least one in every team, have said that they were in pain after Baku, that they had difficulty in keeping the car on track or had blurred vision, and team principals trying to manipulate what is being said in order to keep the competitive advantage, and trying to play political games when the FIA tries to come up with a quick solution to at least pit the cars in a better solution is disingenuous. And that is what I said. All of the cars, and I am not only talking about the Mercedes, suffered in some way or another in Baku and still do here. The cars are stiff, or the car bounces. This is a joint problem that we are having in Formula One. The response by many fans and media to Mercedes' original complaints was disbelief. They were in control of their car and could make changes to their car to stop the bouncing, but they chose not to. The new accusations against Mercedes won't improve their public image either. Obviously, there isn't any proof of anything at the moment, just circumstantial evidence. But team bosses joining ranks against Mercedes shows you that Toto's political games may have finally crossed a line in the eyes of the other teams. This won't pass away quickly or subtly. The two team managers who are competing for wins, Christian Horner and Mattia Binotto, joining forces to turn against the team that hasn't posed a threat to them all season is the unlikeliest of outcomes. However, that might be the most incriminating aspect of the whole scenario. You know you've made a mistake when two people who ought to be fighting it out between themselves turn on you instead. See you guys in the next video.